Hello, it's Martin with news about the upcoming Cupra Raval. Some new information has just been released, so having seen the car in person at IAA in Munich, I thought it's the perfect opportunity to tell you what the hype is all about, including an in-depth look at the technical underpinnings and some other stuff VW Group is cooking up. But let's start with a walk round of the car itself. As you can see, it is quite heavily camouflaged, but this is a pre-production prototype, which means that the final version will actually look like what's available here. I will try my best to describe what I see in person, and I will try to get as many detail shots as possible so you can visualize what's about to come. But rest assured, it's very similar to the Raval concept which was announced earlier, if you want to see some nicer images without any camo. It's the context which is important, because it's not just the Raval which is coming out from Cupra, but VW Group as a whole has a massive portfolio of relatively affordable, compact city cars coming out built on the same platform, and we will touch on the technicalities in a second because there's a lot to explore. Basically, it's now called the MEB Plus platform. I believe in the past it used to be referred to as MEB Entry, and it's designed to underpin these compact cars with the aim to also help reduce the build costs. The Raval will be the first car to come out on it, I believe, in late 2025/2026, and it will be shortly followed by the VW ID Polo that was also already previewed by the ID2 All concept, but VW is going back to traditional naming schemes. Likewise, there will be an ID Polo GTI later on as a hot spicy version of that car. The ID Cross, more of a crossover SUV version of the Polo, but still in a very compact footprint. And Škoda is also going for a slightly more crossover-shaped vehicle with the Škoda Epiq. In terms of dimensions, the Raval is just over 4 meters long and the wheelbase is 2.6 meters. So think something actually quite similar to a BMW i3, which we know is a very city-friendly vehicle. There is also a huge emphasis on packaging, so we are expecting a very spacious boot, quite spacious rear seats, and yes, it will be a practical 5-seater. But let's be honest, it's the design which differentiates all of these models in VW Group's lineup. So let's take a look at the Cupra Raval in a bit more detail. It follows a traditional hatchback silhouette, but there are some nice accents on the rear pillars. You still get a rear screen wiper. And speaking of the tailgates, there will be a light bar spanning the entire width, continuing into the rear wings, with an illuminated red Cupra badge as well. This has just become legal in Europe, so expect a lot more manufacturers to adopt a similar style. Down the sides, what stands out are the flush door handles. It is possibly a first for VW Group, or at least for Cupra, for a mass market vehicle. And yes, that is making it to the final production version. But if that's not your cup of tea, you want something a little bit more conventional, the ID Polo will feature normal stick-out manual door handles. Other than that, underneath the side mirrors, you can see that they do house cameras. And that's because despite going compact, VW Group is not compromising on technology and features, mostly to probably compete with the Chinese electric vehicles. That means 360-degree area view will be available as an option, so will be travel assist, and not just any travel assist. Despite being lower end in the lineup than the, for example, ID3, ID4, Cupra Born, etc., it will get a new generation of travel assist, which I would assume has some refinements to the lane-centric algorithms to make the steering feel a little bit more refined, but also will now recognize traffic lights. I'm not quite sure how that will work, whether it's utilizing imaging data from the cameras or whether it will require smart traffic lights. What's very difficult to capture on video, but is really pronounced in person, is the shape of the bonnet. There are these couple of very sharp creases and they really stick out. So I'm sure when you're going to be sitting inside of the vehicle looking out, it will feel like you are in an actually properly sporty car. The headlights are also camouflaged, but we know from the concept as well that they will feature this triple triangular design with the daytime running lights. But from what I've been able to see, it appears that the projector unit for the actual dipped and high beam is integrated into the same cluster. Other than that, very usual Cupra stuff, lots of the bronze accents and the radar sensor located down in a very compact grille given it's an electric vehicle which doesn't need much cooling. This display example is sitting on 19-inch wheels, and crucially, the charging port is now located in a front wing. And that's because the underlying architecture is practically completely different to existing MEB cars. It's not just about looks, of course there will be the standard mass market version, but Cupra has already also announced a spicy VZ. And it is going to be a proper hot hatch. What I mean by that is that when manufacturers have been doing more enthusiast-friendly versions of their electric models, it usually means a slightly more aggressive tune for the electric motor, maybe some bigger wheels, and that's it. But with these cars, including the Polo GTI, it is a lot different. Of course, yes, the suspension is retuned. It includes DCC, which are adaptive dampers, yes, a higher motor power output, and importantly, a limited slip differential. And given these are front-wheel drive vehicles, that should make a massive difference to handling and really differentiate the base models to the performance versions, even at potentially a slight decrease in efficiency. And here is a cutaway of the two most important components underpinning all of these vehicles. The battery pack, completely different to existing MEB products, utilizing new PowerCo unified cells. PowerCo is almost like a subsidiary of VW Group, and they have their own management CEO and have been hard at work at making a new battery cell. It's the same cell across the entirety of the lineup in terms of the physical format, but the chemistry may differ. In the first iteration here, we are expecting LFP chemistry, which will be very robust and obviously a bit more cost-effective to produce. I just listened to a presentation about a more long-term vision, and despite the format being shared, the cell should be compatible with these higher energy dense chemistries, but also on the other hand of the spectrum, for ultra-cheap vehicles, they could utilize sodium chemistry. And unlike the existing ID products, they are not grouped into modules. It's a straight cell-to-pack design, meaning if we were to remove the top plate of the battery tray, it's all populated using individual cells rather than being grouped into modules. My slight concern is that they are prismatic cells, but let's be honest, these are not high-performance vehicles, so it should be completely sufficient for the intended application. Let's move on to the motor now, mounted in the front together with all the other power electronics, and that's once again the reason why the charge port is located in the front, to reduce the amount of high voltage wiring needed. That reduces cost and weight of the vehicle. But actually, let's move back at the stand to learn more about it in detail. And here it is. It's a completely new and different design. The inverter has been designed in-house by VW. When I say different design, I'm fairly sure the actual motor itself was used previously in some VW hybrid vehicles to complement the combustion engine, but it means that as a smaller, more compact, lighter, less powerful motor, it will make sense in these entry-level vehicles rather than going for a much bigger and more expensive unit like the APP350, which we would see in something like the VW ID 7. Speaking of motors, there's also a new APP350. This is designed to replace the APP310 motor. When I made a video about the facelift version of the ID3, I did express my disappointment that it's only the GTX version which sits at the top end of the lineup, which gets the updated 550 motor from the aforementioned ID7. However, VW is not leaving the lower end cars untouched. The 350 will be a cheaper version of basically the 550. It will inherit the same hairpin windings and design from the 310, but the cooling package and some of the findings from the higher end 550 have been carried over. And this should make its way into the facelifted version of the ID3 in probably late 2026, where the car will not just get a tech lift, but also a pretty significant redesign to bring it in line with the VW products which are launching now, like the Polo and the Cross, with a more traditional face and proportions. And on the topic of the Cross, here it is, still in concept form, but keep in mind when we saw the ID2 All concept, the production version of the ID Polo looks very close, despite it still being camouflaged. So this is realistically what you can expect. It is designed to directly compete with cars like the Renault 4, for example, whereas the Polo will be a lower-down, more compact hatchback to compete with the Renault 5. And the one theme I got from this conference is that VW is shouting that they are listening to customer feedback. So other than the more conventional exterior, which should appeal to a broader market than the ID3, which I personally liked, but I appreciate is not everyone's cup of tea, the interior has been hugely redesigned with emphasis on much better build quality and materials. There should be a lot of cloth surfaces and soft touch padding everywhere. A new infotainment system with a bigger screen, faster software, faster processor, a bigger instrument cluster display, because some people complained that the small unit on the ID3 and 4 looks a bit cheap. So now you will have a much more traditional digital instrument display, and physical buttons are making a comeback. There are going to be 4 traditional hardware window switches, supposedly made out of metal and galvanized, really premium, especially for an entry-level vehicle. There are now normal buttons on the steering wheel with directional pads for navigating some of the functions of the displays and for the adaptive cruise control features. And underneath the infotainment system are toggle switches which are going to control the air conditioning. Some of the more elaborate functions for the HVAC system are still going to be in the screen, but at least this way you will have quick access to things like the temperature. Of course, the final layout is to be seen, but it shouldn't be too long until we hear from VW about those. And if you want to stay up to date, actually make sure to subscribe to the channel, because I will definitely try to get my hands on them. Let's conclude in front of the VW stand then. Unfortunately, after the initial press briefing on day one, the ID Polo got moved pretty quickly and it's nowhere to be seen, so I didn't quite get proper hands-on time with it. But the important thing is the technology and the rollout of all of these models. I hope I covered the things you wanted to know. If you want to look up the specs, there is plenty of information out there now. There are basically going to be 2 battery sizes, about a 38 kilowatt hour with a real-world range of about 150 miles, usable for daily city use. Whereas if you want these compact cars to be your only vehicle, I would definitely advise looking at the bigger battery options, which will be in the high 50s of usable energy capacity, and those should do well over 200 miles on a charge, even at pretty fast speeds, at least by UK standards, and with the heating on, for example. Obviously, the final specs will vary slightly depending on what vehicle you are looking at and the exact configuration, but expect this to be the ballpark. And that's it. Let me know in the comments what you think. Would you be happy to give VW a shot if you were put off previously by the slightly more wacky design of the ID3 and 4? I think there's now a huge emphasis on customer feedback, so while it may feel like sometimes you are ignored by manufacturers, voting with your wallet clearly helps, because if you're not buying these cars, manufacturers do have to listen. I wish VW the best, because it clearly shows that they pushed hard to make these changes, to make better products at very attractive price points. In the UK, we are expecting the cheapest versions to start from just over £20,000. So once again, directly to rival the Renault 5 and the 4. So yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more EV content. There are going to be more videos on the channel from the IAA Motor Shop in Munich. So I will catch you in the next one.